Welcome back, ladies and gentlemen, and now we will move on to the closing session. Through the entire annual meeting program, we had 2 plenary sessions and 5 technology sessions and 3 special sessions. All sessions are available on demand, and please take advantage of these features to view the sessions that interest you. Now, I'd like to introduce Chair of ICEF Steering Committee, Mr. Tanaka Nobuo, the former Executive Director, International Energy Agency, and CEO of TANAKA Global Incorporated. I would like to ask Mr. Tanaka to moderate the closing session, so please take the floor.
Thank you. This is the largest panel of 10 people, all the steering committee members of the ICEF. Some of our colleagues has left already, but these are the remaining steering committees. We are the young staff, young people with lots of new ideas, and brain is as young as young experts or young ICEF members. So what we are trying to do now in this panel is that first, what is your take of the ICEF 2024? You have moderated some session, you have joined and discussed the things in the special dialogue, etc., etc. So when you observe 2024 ICEF, what is your take? And then the second question on the second round is what we should do for the next 10 years. These are the 2 questions which we want to ask each of you. And maybe if we have extra time, we will have the discussion among us. Let's start with Hosen. Go ahead with the takes of the 2024 ICEF.
Yeah. I go first, just the reason that I sit right beside you. The sessions were just marvelous, and learned a lot, very productive. And I have several points I want to share with you. While I was appreciating the sessions, I felt that I was not quite sure where we are, where we stand now with regard to these various efforts made toward the net zero. Although we had a serious sessions about assessing the realities of the current trajectories. Therefore, I thought it could be very useful if we had some kind of a global stock take on innovation at the beginning of the conference. Now here, innovation, we can limit that to green innovation or just innovation in open sense, because I think any innovation can have green implication. And sooner or later, I think every investment will be green investment, so that the word green will disappear. I hope, that's my hope. And I've had further thought on that global stock take on innovation. Then my initial thought was perhaps organizations like NEDO can prepare a report synthesizing about various assessments on the progress on the involvement of innovation. And I think that would be very useful. If NEDO want me to do that, I would be glad to join. And so NEDO present such key findings of such the synthesis, analyzing, assessing the status of innovation. And then that as a beginner of the starter of the conference, so we all start at the same point. And then several sessions will follow to deep dive into those key findings, engaging with core actors of those innovations, and hopefully in a more interactive mode rather than a presentation type. So sort of minimize the presentation mode, however, maximize more interactive fashion. One-on-one could be very good, involving the core actor of the key innovation identified by NEDO. And then I also further suggest that the innovation here include more than just the conventional science and technology. I wish it include the agenda, social science disciplines, and so including the ideas, proposals, and arguments, challenging the established views or presenting the alternative to the established views. So I think if we can organize a conference in this fashion, then we could be much more focused on the innovation part of Innovation for Cool Earth Forum. So thank you. I'll reserve my comments for the next.
Okay, thank you. Ismail, I think you will talk about agriculture and food, I guess.
Yes, I'm very committed to this idea that we can actually transform the food and agricultural sector from being a major emitter and fairly wasteful sector to one that is efficient and that reaches the poor and the hungry around the world, and at the same time that can capture carbon and sequestrate it much better than anything else, because after all, this is nature's own system. And it is so closely intertwined with water issues. I mean, representing like 70% of global freshwater withdrawals and other things that can be done. And more specifically, as I mentioned earlier, on the fact that we could transform the agriculture of India 60 years ago with the technology of 60 years ago, the communications of 60 years ago, and the infrastructure of 60 years ago, tells me that we can do what we need to do at the level of the global scale for agriculture in the next 10 to 20 years. So I think that's what I would have to say as something. But I would like to say something about the conference, since you've opened that possibility, Mr. Chairman. I think one of the things that we should perhaps consider is to have a forum somewhere associated with this conference where people can present wild ideas. I mean, innovation involves wild ideas. And I mean, who would have thought 3-4 years before we got ChatGPT what we were going to get in terms of that? So these breakthroughs, whether it was Windows with Microsoft, with the young Bill Gates, or the private computer with Steve Jobs and so on, these are things that are coming up. But these young people we can have in a forum of ideas that doesn't have to be well-studied cost-benefit analysis type of work. I mean, just throw out wild ideas. And if I may, I'll close with two actual, one that I was told about and one which I personally lived. That my late friend Jacques-Yves Cousteau, who was the guy who invented the aqualung and gave the world the undersea world of Jacques Cousteau and so on, a great environmentalist. And he would tell me, Ismail, never underestimate what dreams can do. And he gave me the example of the fact that after the International Geophysical Year, there was a major push towards Antarctica, and people wanted to put military bases, people wanted to explore for mining and so on. And he said, no, not just he, but many other environmentalists at the time said, no, let's keep this to pristine wilderness and science. And somebody told him, what? You want to keep a whole continent for a bunch of penguins? And he said, yes, exactly. And guess what? In 1959, we got the Antarctic Treaty, and it did stay pristine with only scientific research stations and not the military and the commercial. Now, myself, later on in 93, so that's long after the Antarctica, we were trying to set up the Global Environment Facility. And we said, if you want to protect biodiversity, it's a global benefit, but all the burden would be to protect, for example, in Costa Rica, the tropical forest, the burden is all on Costa Rica. So the cost is on Costa Rica, but the cost is local, but the benefits are global, and we should have a facility for that. And somebody told me, what, you think you're going to get $1 billion for a bunch of insects in the tropics? And I said, yes. And we did. In fact, we got $3 billion. So I would say that as a matter of encouraging that we should also, yes, we need to look at careful studies and so on, but we also have a space where people can be wild in the ideas that they can present, because a forum that is concerned with innovation, I think, must create that kind of space.
Thank you. A dream is very important. I mean, and young people, we're supposed to have young people in each panel because we want their dreams to come true. Chanwa.
Yeah, thank you, Chair. My biggest takeaway for ICEF 2024 is really driving home the significance and the importance, actually, of system innovation. I think we achieved that this year in particular as this 11th year. You assume it's the beginning of the second decade, actually. The reason I said this, and of course we had Johan Rockstrom, and who was literally here with us actually yesterday, really bring the most updated scientific research and conclusions actually to tell us the planetary health situation. So now we started to really put a lot of innovations, ideas actually in a sort of a planetary Earth system. And so we are sort of regulated in that context, constrained, so that, yes, we could use our imagination, we could creativity, whatever, but somehow we know as a humanity, collectively, we need to make sure we have to really respect the boundaries, which in many cases we've already transpassed, and a lot of innovation, maybe most of the innovation, should be addressing that part of a challenge. On one side, we need to reduce our footprints, but in the meantime, we need to innovate, finding solutions actually to expand. We call it the handprints. Hopefully somehow we're going to bring back the harmony, the health, between man and nature. So that's the first point I want to highlight here. So now with that, I think it's not just to say new. If you look at China, China has already taken this ecological boundary or planetary boundary into the policy framework. In China, we call it ecological civilization, ecological red lines. The red lines actually pretty much aligned with the planetary boundary. It's a country level. So the whole country is divided into 47 ecological function zones already. So you start to see policies, regulations, standards. So a lot of things actually, instruments, tools, instruments coming together to really drive transformation, transition in reality, particularly to make sure, the development plans, economic activities, whatever, will be aligned with the boundary. With the science actually at this moment there. And so innovation to large extent we call it is boundary limited and or red line driven or defined, whatever. So that's very important dimension there. ICEF actually in particular because it's innovation driven. And we pretty much cover a lot of things, but the system innovation is pretty much embedded in the DNA. Of course, sometimes we will look at specific technologies, but in the meantime, we started to look at different sectors, industries, whatever, stuff like that. So it's in there, but this, I think the new breakthrough for this year in particular, because we really embedded the planetary boundary, actually, this planetary system, Earth system, actually, in that context there. Now, there are challenges, there's no doubt about it, but in the meantime, I think more thoughts, exploration, innovation, more like creating, on the side of creating opportunities there. Now, the session Ismail and I sort of co-moderated is focusing on the finance system, right? And so that's one of the systems, social economic system, energy system, and this year we particularly talked about innovative finance, and that's the finance system. And again, actually, if you look at the discussions, the speakers, of course, they all brought in their unique perspectives, insights, but somehow I think that's aligned with, the systems sort of perspective there. Now, what is sort of exciting at this moment? And so this morning when I was, because I had this first panel, plenary panel, so I did a little bit more homework actually. So one piece of sort of social media by a friend of mine from ADB really caught my attention. He shared something actually, the most recent ADB mission to China. And this is a particular focus on the Yellow River, sort of nature, agriculture, food, nature restoration project. That's pretty much learning from ADB's efforts in China, working with the Chinese government on the Yangtze River, which is the longest river in China. So the concept itself, called land-based agriculture, food, nature restoration, sort of framework there, it's already embraced, being deployed in reality. So many of the things actually we're talking about here, system innovation, system changes there, already being deployed in some parts of the world. I come from China, so I sort of know China a little bit more than many of you probably. And so that's the most exciting part, actually. I think, yes, this year we already achieved and made further progress on system innovation. And I think this decade, actually, probably that should be the core part of ICEF, actually, from today forward. Thank you.
Thank you. Kuroda-sensei.
Thank you. For the general impression, I think this year it's nicely coordinated, starting from Rockstone Planet Boundary, and also it's followed. So I think it's quite nicely done. And maybe becoming just a community, just not just having annual meetings, but sort of community which is important and lasting outcomes, such like roadmaps and the AI, thanks to David Sandalow. And of course, the Nobel Prize in Physics and Chemistry went to AI. It's just coincidence, but I think it's an important issue. And the roadmaps, it's really, I was told, 380 pages. And that is a very good effort, I think. And it's important, and we're proud of having that. Now, innovation. ICEF is innovation. And Naki, unfortunately, he has to go. And myself moderated a session, Climate Stabilization. And we had 3 speakers. 2 are really technological innovation. And the third one is more concerned about humanity and the society, so it's community. So that's, I think it's well nicely balanced. And you may think it's like a science fiction, DAC, direct air capture, and also solar radiation management. So maybe some of you might say, what's really going to do that? But we have to explore that. But to make it scale up, lots of moral hazard, maybe more risk. So we have to really think community and exchange opinions among many stakeholders, including young generations. Thank you.
Thank you, Kuroda-sensei. George.
Yeah, thank you very much. This wonderful conference, I learned much, very much. And the first thing what I learned was the statement from John Rockström, cut greenhouse gas emissions by 50% in the next 5 to 10 years. This is a very strong statement. And then came Václav Smil, and he pointed us to the, he mentioned the point that recent investments in coal power, steel industry, airplanes, etc., with economic lifetimes of, let us say, 30 to 50 years, with these technologies, we have already fixed so much innovation, CO2 emissions, that decline of 50% in the short run is impossible, except, that is what I learned, except if you shut down these new investments. Okay, this is maybe a new dimension to ICEF discussion. I discussed this idea with Vikram Mehta from India. He was sitting next to me, and so we had a communication and say, okay, that is a very dangerous approach because you risk unemployment and big economic problems. In the session on innovative finance, several speakers called for institutions to identify green projects. Altogether, none of these speakers address the problem what to do with the existing technologies which we should shut down in the next 5 to 10 years. That is the key task for innovation, to my view. It is not building up new technologies. Of course, we should also build new photovoltaic. It will come automatically. We have, if the today's capacity for building photovoltaic cells, mostly in China, if China will continue to utilize this technology, these capacities, we will triple photovoltaic production for solar electricity production from photovoltaic in the next 10 years, triple. We have nothing to do, only to invest, taking these products from China and put them somewhere where we can produce electricity. That is incredible. So, but we have not solved the demand of Johan to cut the emissions by 50%. If we produce more electricity, we cut nothing. We reduce the growth of emissions by the growth of electricity demand, but we don't cut. We must shift the idea. So how to do it? We have the second round. I will answer what to do in the second round.
Okay, thank you. Yes, very important point you made. Vali.
Yeah, I've got 3 points to make. The first is that the discussion we had on net zero means that there has to be more emphasis on adaptation, because quite clearly things are going to happen, and we should consider whether we want to look at innovation that is happening in the field of adaptation. So that's my first point. The second point is that through AI and other things, there is a lot of fake news about climate change and generally environmental protection that is being put out to people. For the people doing it have got their own reasons for doing it. And we need to consider what is the innovation to counter the fake news. It's a little bit, Ho-Sang said we should not only look at, we should look at the social things. This may fall under that. Also, how to reach out to people, because these other people are saying climate change is a hoax and this and that and such things. And that's my third point, is that we should consider doing more focus on the food system. We had a discussion yesterday. I think the next time we can have a slightly different type of discussion. Maybe we can have a representative of one of the very large multinational food companies. The food system is dominated by a handful of very big companies, like we had the representative of Total, and last time we had a representative of the motor car manufacturers here. Maybe we can have the food companies here. And also in that discussion, we can have representatives of the farmers. There are farmers' organizations in various parts of the world. Maybe we can do that. Thank you, Chairman.
Thank you, Vali. Let's move to Asia.
Thank you. Once again, this has been an inspiring meeting. We have been able to discuss in the atmosphere of intellectual honesty. Sometimes in climate talk is sometimes burdened with orthodoxy. And which means that you never get surprised if you know what you have to say and what you are allowed to say and what not to say. So we have managed to avoid that, and I like it. For instance, yesterday we voted who was right in the debate, and personally I believe that both the pessimist and optimist are right. Václav Smil is right in his description of the current situation. We are not on the track that some politicians imagine. We have to face the dire straits. However, I learned that AI could be a game changer. Especially, I believe that in adaptation, but also in mitigation, we will find clever ways to improve efficiency and save raw materials and energy in a way that could not be possible without this massive counting. Another game changer could be cooperation This I noticed in nuclear session. I understood that, for instance, Japan, Korea, and USA could do much together in developing SMRs, because we lost a lot of workforce and expertise during those years when nuclear was no-go. And this gap must be crossed over. And I believe that cooperation would accelerate the process. Thank you.
Thank you, Asia, for nuclear. Yamaji Sensei, please.
Okay. Already many steering committee members mentioned that the continuing keyword of ICEF is innovation. And this time we use the word of green innovation to tackle with a planetary crisis. And in addition to that, to me, it's a rather more realistic, or not more urgent, really required innovation is the financial innovation. It's a very urgent problem. We should respond to this crisis or financial crisis immediately. So that is the plenary issues. And technology sessions, I joined the nuclear session moderated by Dr. Kohara. And the theme is advanced reactors and new nuclear application other than electricity production. It's good, but actually advanced reactors, many participants mentioned about small modular reactors, and one panelist mentioned about the laser fusion, inertial confined fusion. And I'm a bit, how to say, hopefully we have more discussion about non-electricity nuclear applications. But through hearing the discussions at the session, I think even within the related new application related to small modular reactors, it will explore new application of nuclear, because so far nuclear provided baseload electricity demand, but other small modular reactors, they can provide electricity for specific purpose, or industrial purpose, or a data center, or such kind of thing. So the output of nuclear power should be flexible to meet such demand. So in that case, I think we can send the message of global positive trend of nuclear power. And lastly, personally, I'm quite interested in the dialogue session with Butler Smith. I think facts is very important, hopefully measured facts. And Butler shows many quantified data. That is very important. I think these quantified facts are very important, because past cannot change, but then forecast for the future could change quite easily. So to analyze the past data is very important to think the future, I think.
Thank you, Yamaji Sensei. Václav, I think you enjoy that special dialogue, I think, yourself.
Well, somebody has to pay for all of it, so I was glad to hear this morning the talks about the eventual cost. Sorry, but I'm afraid that we need much more. And what I've read and heard so far, I tried to do some basic primitive estimate myself. I think the figure is 0.5, $500 billion to $2 trillion a year are really, really small. The real cost will be much, much higher, and we should come at least, we cannot fix the real cost, but we should come at least closer to what it might be, because we know very well from many previous complex projects that initial estimates are always well below the final estimate, really. And we are only in the very initial stages of estimating the cost of it, including what Georg mentioned, the fact that somebody has to pay for closing down all these things which are employing millions of people now. So I think this would be a very important thing to focus much more closely with some determination and with some persistence on not pinpointing that's impossible, but coming closer to the real eventual cost of doing all of this.
Thank you, Václav. Sakane-san.
Yes, so definitely the first take for me is the status with all the numbers and statistics, what's going on in the most updated data. Then, well, we talked a lot about innovation. We talked lots about the solutions potential as well. These are the hopes, but at the same time, I still don't know how we can actually, slow down the emission and then we reduce 7% annually from next year already, and we don't have the answer yet. So the big how is still up on the air as a question. So I'd like everyone to take that, definitely. What we should do is, of course, to tackle that is the simple answer for myself. But at the same time, the hope for myself individually is that I could reflect what we've been doing in the ground level, also definitely contribute. At the same time, such transition in the local level could also bring back the democracy in changing our mindset, changing our actions. Actually, action taken for climate mitigation or adaptation is a process for democracy, is my take. So that's what I'm sharing here. Thank you.
Okay, very good. So second round, we want to talk about what's next, what the ICEF should. Some of you have already picked up several of the issues. One of the issues which I want you to comment is that in the Rockstrom discussion and our discussion of the statement, we talk a lot about what is the possible innovation or reform of the global governance, including financial architecture. What kind of view you think we have to do with this global governance issue? Just we have to stay as such, or we have to be more innovative and try to do something ourselves? Just, I want to get your comment. Of course, you may have to say whatever you want, but if you can comment on this global governance issue, I'm very happy. Now we have about 20-some minutes, so I limit your statement by 2 minutes each, okay? I will stop you. Let's start with Hosem, yes.
With regard to the global governance, I do not have any specific idea to suggest at this moment. And for next year conference, I want to rather put it in the context of next decade. Next year is the first year that global emission must decline, but it will not happen, and therefore the world will be very noisy about we are not keeping on track of the promised pathway. So it will create confusion, and the confusion is about whether Paris trajectory for 1.5 is compatible with the economic development trajectory. And secondly, the economic ministries, finance ministries, economic ministries are getting more involved in climate change discussion. And many central bankers, including Korea, have found that the climate impacts created an inflationary pressure lasting about at least a year. So the inflationary pressure brings in the higher interest rate and lowers down the economic growth. Now, one has to break that chain, and let me tell you this, probably this is the only one climate change conference that has not mentioned adaptation. You brought adaptation, and in fact, I checked in the previous 10 meetings, and whether we mentioned adaptation at all. No adaptation, just mitigation. Now, to break that chain of inflationary pressure leading down to GDP to slow down is an adaptation. And that adaptation will reduce the pressure on the damage from the climate change. So we need to look at how innovation can have meaningful adaptation. And then one thing missing here also, transmission. Every country is suffering from the lack of investment transmission. So next time, should we take
time up? So let's move to Ismail. 2 minutes.
Very briefly, I think that we will not break down the major deadlock in redesigning the global world order. The tensions between the various groups, an American hegemony and the Western power, but a resurgent Russia and an unstoppable rise of China and others coming behind like India and so on. So the political part will not be done. But I believe there's a lot of room for innovation, whether it was like the Green Bank that was discussed in the finance innovation session, or it is, as I pointed out to my friend also, IPCC was a great innovation as an international approach to do things. CGIAR was a great innovation which transformed India and so on. And all of these, I think, are things that are partial, but not the full structure of governance like it was done when the UN was founded and the Bretton Woods institutions were founded. So something that sweeping is not going to happen, but I think we can focus a green bank. We can focus on a number of new governance structures that will have a greater degree of fairness and a greater degree of openness to innovation.
You don't have to say agriculture and food? Still you have 39 seconds. Okay, let's move to Chanwa.
Yeah, thank you, Chair. 3 quick points. I do echo Ho-sen's point about looking into the next decade there. So my first point is that I think now more than ever, we have the clarity about the biggest challenge as well as opportunity on the table in front of every one of us, meaning aligning our transition or transformation, the Earth system, planetary boundary system, and the socio-economic system, as well as others, particularly in that the human part, the just inclusiveness into this sort of a context, alignment there. Sounds easy, but it's really, really difficult to address. That's why I think rather than just look at the next year, I think that should be turned into next decade agenda. So I would probably look into 2035. That's the first point. Second point, I do want to further emphasize the focus of system innovation, because in order to address those issues, we are literally, or we have to drive system changes there. Sounds easy, it's really complex, requires lots of innovation, requires all the people coming in together. The last point, actually, Chair mentioned about the governance. I think the current effort, actually, the journey of reforming global financial architecture offers maybe one of the best opportunities actually for us to sort of get involved. And we started the conversation here already, but I think governance, of course, is key into designing or reshaping future financial architecture systems there. What's exciting is that if you look at accounting standards are changing, so you start to see this alignment generally emerging at this moment, particularly around the money, where to raise money, how to spend the money, how, the deliverables, whatever, stuff like that. So I think the financing, should continue to be a focus. Thank you.
Thank you. Just in time. Kuroda-sensei.
Okay, thank you. Under the geopolitical situations, it's very difficult to think about the global governance, but we can. But still, there is room for private sectors in the finance and also maybe academia as well to go into the global governance. So we're just hoping for that. About the AI, we discussed about the data center energy consumption, and it's a very important point, and I'm very glad that was mentioned. But then they said about the accessibility and availability of data, but of course I want to see the quality of data, which is use AI. And AI is going to be more and more important in both positive and negative ways. And I think it would be very nice to discuss about it next year as well. Thank you.
Thank you. Next, George.
Yes, we have to shut down in the next 10 years some existing power stations, etc. How we organize it? It is, of course, more complex than putting money on the table in order to build up new things for politicians, also for social systems. But this is not an impossible task. There are two strategies possible. One is introducing a global CO2 emission trade system, because by this mechanism, the old technologies, or even not old, the polluting technologies get a disadvantage. And if you have a cap and trade system, you will automatically come down with the emissions. But of course, we have to go in details. We have in Europe now 15 years experience of cap and trade systems. It is still a difficult task, but it is one approach. The second approach is that what was implemented in Germany with the phase out of coal power stations. The government negotiated with each individual operator of a coal-fired plant to a deal saying you have to shut down your coal-fired station until this date, and compensating A, for the owner, second, for the people who work, third, for the region in which this capacity is closed. I will stop here because this is, of course...
You still have 30 seconds.
Yeah, but I think
okay,
the message is...
No, stop.
We need two sessions. One is discussing emission trade systems, and one is discussing negotiations.
Thank you. Joe, thank you. Yes, I think this is very important idea, but very, very tough. But this is interesting. We could deal with some issues like that. Let's move to Valley.
For the future, I've already said the three things. One is innovation in the field of adaptation, innovation in communication to counter fake news, and thirdly, the food systems. I've mentioned those three. On the question of governance, I had the feeling that, often governments, when they're faced with an intractable problem, what a government does, it sets up a commission of inquiry, then it says, we've done something. We've set up a commission of inquiry, or we've set up a task team, or we've set up a committee of experts. And I think this governance discussion is a little bit like that. We've got global governance. The IPCC, it's such innovation. If you try to set it up now, you're not going to succeed. It is something that we must look after and treasure. The UNFCCC is there, it's working. No global multilateral big body is going to work any more efficiently than that. It has inbuilt inefficiencies, and that's how it is. The fact of the matter is that the handful of big and powerful countries who are responsible for all these emissions are the ones that must do something. That's where it is, and that's what you need. And I'd mentioned in the run-up to the Paris Climate Agreement, we had parallel, on the side, offline discussions between some of the big countries, and that's how we were able to agree on the architecture of that. And that's what needs to be considered. Maybe G20 is the platform, maybe something else. But I don't think we should spend our time trying to set up a new global organization. It's too much energy for too little that we'll get.
Thank you very much. Very, very realistic comments. Thank you, Barry. Next, Asia.
Yes, you almost stole my words. Creating some kind of global governance, it doesn't sound attractive to me. Maybe it's because of my background in European politics and coming from a small member country. I have seen that people don't want the power to disappear somewhere high up. People easily lose incentives if they get the impression that this is solved somewhere in higher levels. It might mean losing responsibility and losing creativity at the same time. However, I personally believe in coordinated cooperation and agreed targets and shared rules. But so far, I don't believe in top-down approach.
Thank you. Yamaji Sensei.
Okay, first to global governance. It sounds quite attractive, but probably because English is foreign language to me. So governance, to me, it's a very strong sense. I think the largest unit of governance up to nation or country, such a level. So global governance sounds too strong to me. But because of international cooperation or framework, so that is a more understandable English to me. But if for a specific field, probably global governance is required, I understand. And as to adaptation, I think it's a very good idea to treat adaptation in ICEF. Because an adaptation is necessary. We have already more than 1 degree C warming. So there are some response to that already happened, climate change. And also, adaptation has many co-benefits, like flood management, modernization of agriculture, such kind of things. So I do strongly support to introduce adaptation for our discussion.
Thank you. Next is Václav, yes.
Well, I will pass any judgment on the chances of any global government, but I know we will have to address sooner or later the big elephant in the room nobody's talking about, and that's the access. I give you just a few brief examples. Size of families have been declining over past generation. Size of houses has nearly doubled, average housing around the world. Average car a generation ago was 1.2 tons. Now it's 1.7 to 1.8 tons. A massive increase. Average supermarket, now it doesn't matter where it is around the world, now is stocking 30,000 items. Okay, 30,000 items. Okay, so something will have to be done about all these things. We just cannot advocate decline, decrease, going down, reducing, and having all the material components of the life actually substantially increasing. Not to mention, of course, food. We produce so much food worldwide that we waste 40% of it, right? So how can we be doing this constant excess, and talking about reducing things for the future?
Thank you very much. Next is Sakano-san.
Yes, regarding the global governance, well, I don't have much idea, but only thing I can say of is that probably, well, I don't know, like for any kind of global decision making, or at least whatever protocols or anything that to put up on, probably we should have a principle of that whatever you are putting up on or you are, presenting to the world, is that actually benefit the 7 generations ahead. So something like that needs to be put as a, basic principle or the core. Otherwise, unless you can't say that this is beneficial for that, then you shouldn't be putting that up somewhere in the world. So maybe something like that is possible, then I'm really happy to second, but I don't know how.
Thank you. We have now 10 minutes. Thanks for your cooperation of limiting your statement to 2 minutes. We have 10 minutes to go. There are good, somewhat good consensus that you may have to discuss more about adaptation. But adaptation sometimes is considered by the environment people, it's an excuse of not doing enough for mitigation. Can we reconcile this adaptation mitigation thing? Hosen, you are always talking about this issue.
Yes, right. I believe by now they have understood the meaning of adaptation. So adaptation, they understood that. Adaptation is necessity. We cannot avoid that. And it's not an excuse for not doing mitigation. So that misunderstanding has gone. Now, what's remaining now for effective adaptation is for us to understand that adaptation is closely related to the local economic development infrastructure decisions. So it's not different thing. So
Okay.
Their local governance is very important.
I see. Ismail, you have the comment?
Thank you. Yes, I do have two comments on that. Adaptation is absolutely necessary because the negative impacts of climate change, especially among the poorer countries, is there. It's already happening. I mean, people are dying. The floods and droughts are realities. So the notion that somehow we can only just look at the mitigation, important as that is, cannot ignore that new reality. And with the new heat waves, let us remember, when temperatures now reach over 50 degrees, people die. And we just had 1,500 people who died in the pilgrimage in Saudi Arabia because of these high temperatures. And if we're going to get this on a more frequent basis, then we have a lot to do. So I fully support adaptation, and there is no excuse that has nothing to do with continuing to reduce emissions, but it must be to support those who are suffering the consequences of the climate change, which is already here, from forest fires to hurricanes to the drought and floods and so on.
Thank you. Chanwa.
I would like to bring into the conversation about the business and the investment community on the climate adaptation or resilience already. If you look at current latest development of regulations there, so this is the international ISSB, the new standard. So Chinese government regulators, basically have embraced the international standard. So I'm one non-executive director of the board of public listed companies in China. So a major task I've been busy working with the team is trying to figure out actually in the disclosure framework, how do you assess the impact of climate change besides your carbon footprint, whatever. So in reality, the climate adaptation, broader, maybe resilience, impact already being embedded into practice because the companies have to disclose that sort of information. So they have to go out, for instance, the science, the assessment, all the information available there in order to make sure they do a good job of reporting. In the meantime, financial institutions basically, because this is about investment, financial institutions say, I'm going to look at the sort of information to decide whether I'm going to invest in your company to buy your stocks or not. So from that perspective, it's already moving forward. So I call that adaptation as well. Thank you.
Thank you. Asia. Also, I think, followed by Valley.
Yes. If we study the history of climate politics, we can notice that there were at least two major mistakes in the history of that politics. And one was the attitude towards nuclear. It was no go, but another one was definitely attitude against adaptation. It only came to the agenda after several requests of developing countries, because they paid the price of this kind of lacking tool to combat climate question. And I think it would be very interesting to study the ideological background of this attitude and do some corrections in the mindset. Thank you.
Thank you, Vali.
Well, Aya has said more or less what I was going to say, that this thing that if you focus on adaptation, that you're running away from mitigation is a perspective coming from rich countries. If you take the African continent, there is hardly nothing to mitigate. The challenge is adaptation. Mitigation is not the big issue there.
Thank you. You want to say, George?
Yes.
Okay.
To my view, first, in my neighborhood, my neighboring country are also suffering from climate change. It's not only developing countries. Several times it was mentioned, it is mostly, we have floods in Germany, in France, in Switzerland, in Italy. So all the neighboring countries had floods and problems with deaths and with economic damages. The roads had been blocked for several weeks, etc. So second, of course, adaptation takes place. We are doing adaptation, but it is, of course, on a local basis. Nobody talks much about this. It is, as was said already, adaptation is mostly a local emission, building higher dikes, doing something, forestation of cities, etc. This is what, of course, is good. We should have a session about this kind of topics. It's definitively not bad to have a discussion about this.
Yeah, it's clear that cost is increasing of the lack of action for the mitigation, and the deaths, casualties happening. So I think adaptation is kind of a way that we respond to the urgency of the issue, I guess. Okay, another issue probably which I felt there is a good consensus is we will further discuss AI, because we had a very good roadmap thanks to David, and maybe that is the consensus. I mean, everybody's nodding, so probably we don't have to talk about that. Okay, that's another one. Another one, which Václav, I think I really enjoy the special dialogue with you and Jaland and some others. And we continue this, and also, you know, problem is that even with many of us together try to convince Václav, but you never surrender. So you know, if we cannot really convince you, or if we cannot win against you, how can we convince the general public that urgency is there and we have to take action? So this is a very interesting test case, that your stubbornness is very important, but can we really convince you that we have to do this climate change mitigation, etc.? Do you think it's a good idea to continue this dialogue with you?
Well, no, you don't have to convince anybody. I mean, people have their set beliefs. I live in a country which thought they were building communism. It lasted 70 years, and then the USSR collapsed, right? I mean, you know, people have their beliefs, so let them have their beliefs, but history eventually will turn out all right, really, right? It may take a long time and lots of pain. Let me remind you about all of this, you know, reduction, what Vali just said. These are just the numbers. Gigajoules per year per capita. US 200 plus, EU 130, China 110, India 25, Sub-Saharan Africa less than 10. Okay, so you know, Sub-Saharan Africa to do India has to more than double its energy. India to do China has to quadruple its energy, and so on, right? So this is another big elephant in the room about which we are not talking, right? That 2 billion people have to substantially increase as rapidly as possible to lift up their standard of living, the consumption of energy, right? I mean, and this is always, you know, kind of gets overlooked, saying everybody will be reducing, adapting, you know, cutting down, decarbonizing, right? Well, there are 2 billion people, and let's be reminded also the fact that there are 2 billion people who have not finished the first energy transition, who are still burning wood and straw and dry dung. 2 billion people, right? So, I mean, even the first energy transition hasn't been done.
Thank you. I think, you know, maybe somebody suggested me that maybe next year we should have a dialogue between, you know, Johan Rockström and Václav Šumil. And it could be a great fun. But anyway, well, thank you very much for your cooperation. And time is up, so we have to sum up. But I mean, now we have discussed a lot of the possible issues, and I think METI and NEDO will take it and consider for the next agenda for ourselves. Further discussion, we will definitely continue this difficult issue. There are many, many issues now. We come to global governance. I think Ismail didn't push about the roadmap for food and agriculture. It is one possibility. Global governance, green bank, financial architecture, these are another big elements. So there are many, many homeworks we have to do. But thank you very much, our steering committee members, for your contribution and dedication to that discussion. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Mr. Tanaka, and all the steering committee members. So now I would like to invite Professor David Sandalow of the ICEF Steering Committee to present his remarks of the ICEF Roadmap Artificial Intelligence for the Climate Change Mitigation 2. So Professor Sandalow has kindly provided us with a video, so please take a look at the screen.
Hello to everyone at the closing plenary of this year's ICEF annual meeting. My name is David Sandalow, and I'm sorry that I'm unable to stay for the closing plenary this year, and I'm honored to have the opportunity to present to you a summary of this year's ICEF annual roadmap. Last year, we released our AI for Climate Change Mitigation Roadmap, and the question we asked in this roadmap is how can artificial intelligence help reduce emissions of greenhouse gases? We got a tremendous response to this roadmap. Lots of interest in the media, from government officials around the world, from businesses and NGOs. And of course, artificial intelligence has been such a hot topic in the past year. We decided to do a second edition of this roadmap, which we released today as a draft for comment. We looked at the same topic, how can AI help reduce emissions of greenhouse gases? Added extensive research on power demand for AI, which is an issue that's gotten lots of attention in the past year. We updated all old chapters. We added 6 new chapters. And then in every chapter, we added 5 to 10 specific actionable recommendations for what different stakeholders can do to help make sure that AI will reduce emissions of greenhouse gases. As I said, we released the draft for comment today, and the final will be released in at COP29 in Baku. Here's the table of contents. As you can see, we have a background section looking at an introduction to AI as well as to climate change. Then we look at 8 different sectors where we think AI can help make a difference in reducing emissions of greenhouse gases. And then we look at cross-cutting topics. We look at large language models, which have gotten so much attention. We look broadly at government policy and then close with findings and recommendations. So let me just quickly summarize our background material. Our first chapter on the introduction to AI was written by Dr. Alp Kuchuk-Kelbier, who was at ICEF and is in the room at the closing plenary. He wrote a terrific chapter introducing AI to non-experts, talking about how AI is the science of making computers perform complex tasks, how it differs from traditional software. And then the way that I like to explain the capabilities of AI, AI has at least 4 different capabilities, taking large data sets and, first of all, detecting patterns. And I think we're all familiar with this from facial recognition programs. Making predictions, such as, for example, when Netflix recommends what movies you might like, it's looking at large patterns of data and making predictions. AI can also optimize, and I think we're familiar with that from routing on Google Maps, where it optimizes your path between where you are and where you want to go. And then simulating, such as in video games, but there's obviously much more complex simulations that AI can do. We also have a chapter on introduction to climate change chapter. I think most people in this room are familiar with some of the basics here, but I think it's worth repeating that July 22nd of this year was the warmest day ever recorded based on global average temperatures. 2023 last year was the warmest year ever recorded, and the warmest 10 years ever recorded were the last 10 years. But for people who come to this without a knowledge of climate change, we have a that we dive into in this roadmap. The first is the power sector, which is so important because roughly 25% of global greenhouse gases come from the power sector today. And even more important, power sector is central to decarbonization. For the world to achieve net zero emissions, the power sector has to grow because we're going to electrify transportation and heavy industry and heating and other sectors. It must grow and it must decarbonize at the same time. It's a real challenge. And AI is already helping decarbonize the power sector in a number of different ways. It's been very helpful in planning, such as optimizing the location of generation and transmission assets. It's being used increasingly to increase output at solar and wind farms, looking at weather patterns and helping understand them better. And that's led to significant improvements in productivity at some solar and wind farms around the world. But AI can do much more. One of the most promising is dynamic line rating, which is just a way of taking data off of transmission lines, for which you really need AI tools to process, and which allows you to increase the amount of electric power flow through a transmission line. AI is extremely helpful for optimal power flow analyses, for virtual power plants, and also for innovating different types of battery chemistries. Those are just some of the applications. There are a number of barriers, and in every chapter in our roadmap, we look at barriers. And here the barriers include the lack of well-developed models, lack of trained personnel, and the utility business model, which sometimes does not provide the incentives to adopt very helpful AI tools. And it's very important that using AI in real-time operations can create real security and safety risks. And this is a theme that emerges throughout our roadmap. AI can be very helpful, but if you use it without doing the right safety checks, it can cause real problems, particularly in places like the electric grid where it can cause widespread outages or even worse. And then every one of our chapters, as I mentioned, has specific recommendations. For example, here in this chapter, we recommend that national governments, electricity regulators, and utilities work together to develop data standards for grid operations. The utilities and electricity regulators launch programs for training power sector workers to use AI technologies, and that regulators create clear regulatory frameworks. We also have a chapter on the food system, and hugely important because 30% of global greenhouse gases come from the food system. AI is already contributing to sustainable food systems, integrating data from soil sensors and satellites to create fertilizer management plans, creating virtual farms that simulate different crops, weather conditions, and soil properties. AI can do a lot to help reduce emissions from the food system, and we offer a number of recommendations. For example, recommend the creation of collaborative data ecosystems for food systems. Data is absolutely central to AI, and we provide some detail of how we think different stakeholders can create a better data in this area. One area that I'm very excited about here is materials innovation. I think this can be really transformational. This is a picture of Thomas Edison inventing the modern light bulb 150 years ago. When he did that, he took months to test different types of materials running electricity through them to see what light and heat would be produced. Today, we can simulate millions of those interactions in very short period of time, in seconds, and that can really accelerate the innovation cycle. And we discuss that in our roadmap, and then offer recommendations in this chapter as we do everywhere. For example, we recommend that national governments, academia, and private companies collaborate to release AI-ready data sets, material properties. We have a deep dive on the greenhouse gas emissions that are coming from AI, which is a topic that's gotten some attention globally. After a pretty extensive dive into the literature, which I did this summer, my conclusion is that greenhouse gas emissions from AI computation today are currently less than 1%, probably much less than 1% of the global total. But they're very likely to rise in the near term, in part because of significant increases in demand for AI. But in the medium to long term, it is very difficult to say whether AI will lead to increases or decreases in greenhouse gas emissions. The range of uncertainty is really enormous. And it's partly because the efficiency of AI hardware and the efficiency of AI software are both improving dramatically at the same time as demand is increasing. And how those curves will cross, it's hard to say. It's also very good news that some of the largest operators of data centers in the world are deeply committed to net zero emissions. And indeed, they're some of the biggest renewable energy buyers in the world. So the companies that are doing this, many of the biggest companies, very much want to get to net zero emissions and are working hard to do that. As I said, we did a deep dive on data center power demand, which has gotten a lot of attention. In 2023, roughly 1.5% of global electricity demand came from data centers, a little bit more in US, China, the EU, about the same in Japan as the global average. But interestingly, by comparison, 4% of global electricity demand came from aluminum smelters. So some industries are much bigger than data centers when it comes to electricity use. But demand is growing fast. A Goldman Sachs study projects 160% growth by 2030. There are many similar estimates. We have a chart here that collects many of the leading estimates. and this is a really important point, which is worth more than the quick mention I can give it now. But data center demand growth is coming from a lot of sources, not just AI. I think sometimes people tend to equate AI growth and data center demand growth, but data centers are growing for a number of other reasons, including 5G networks, streaming services, social media, online gaming, and more. So we have a number of findings and recommendations. I'm running out of time and don't have time to get to all of them here, but perhaps most important, we find AI is currently contributing to climate change mitigation in important ways and has the potential to make significant contributions to climate change mitigation in the years ahead. And the principal barriers are the lack of available, accessible, and standardized data, and the lack of trained personnel. Our recommendations, which I'll just forward to, every organization working on climate change should consider opportunities for AI to contribute to its work. Every organization working on climate change should prioritize skills development for the people to understand what AI can do. Governments, businesses, and philanthropy should fund fora in which AI experts and climate change experts work together. And we have a number of others, particularly related to data, and how both governments and companies should work to make sure that data sets relevant to climate change mitigation are available for AI models. So with that, I will just wrap up by noting that this is the 13th ICEF Innovation Roadmap. We've done 12 previously since 2015. These have been sponsored by MEDI and NEDO, and I just can't thank MEDI and NEDO enough for the work that they've supported here. It's been hugely important. And here we have some nice words about our roadmaps from Ho-Sung Lee, who may be in the room right now, who said that the ICEF roadmaps provide important research on a wide range of technologies for helping achieve net zero emissions. Vaclav Smil, our colleague, famous energy historian, also had some nice words, as did a number of distinguished academics. We're grateful for their kind words. And with that, if you have comments on the ICEF roadmap, which is live on the ICEF website, please send them to ICEF2024roadmap@gmail.com. I'll repeat that, ICEF2024roadmap@gmail.com by October 21st. We're under a tight timeline to finalize this product because COP29 is starting actually pretty soon. But if you read it and send it, we'd really welcome any comments you might have. Thank you very much for hosting such a great meeting over the past couple of days. Take care. Bye.
Thank you very much, Professor Sandalow. Next, Professor Dr. YAMAJI Kenji, ICEF Steering Committee member, will address the Steering Committee statement. So, Professor Dr. YAMAJI, please take the floor.
Okay, it's my pleasure and honor to be given a role to report the ICEF statement. Like the previous year, we had very much heated discussions among steering committee members to finalize the draft. As a result, the ICEF 2024 statement is a bit longer than usual. I do express my deep gratitude to all steering committee members and thanks to the Secretariat. So let me report the statement and together with infographics at the end. Okay, after a decade on its journey, the Innovation for Cool Earth Forum, ICEF, held its 11th annual meeting as the initiative of Tokyo GX Week. Themed on how to live within the planetary boundaries through green innovation, ICEF 2024 examined hurdles to remove and opportunities to seize and create through innovation in the backdrop of geopolitical and social complexity. And more than 1,700 people from government, international organizations, industry, and academia participated in this event, representing 93 countries and regions. At the conclusion of ICEF 2024, the steering committee is releasing the following statement based on a series of discussions. The statement consists of 3 parts. The first, where our planet stands now. The world faces deepening and complex planetary crises. The concept of planetary boundaries identifies 9 critical boundaries for maintaining the stability and the resilience of the Earth system as a whole, and argues that out of the 9, the world has already overstepped 6, including climate change. A UN report in May concludes that the world is not on track to achieve most of the SDGs by 2030. Multiple crises have caused significant setback to developing countries' efforts to eradicate poverty and hunger. According to the 2024 Global Report on Climate and SDG Synergy, 80% of the SDG targets are directly linked to climate. The synergies between climate action and sustainable development need to be maximized. The 2025 round of nationally determined contributions, NDCs, under the Paris Agreement offers a major opportunity for countries to do so. ICEF hopes that COP29 this November in Baku will make a step forward towards stronger NDCs. The Future Summit concluded last September put transforming global governance at top priority in order to deliver SDGs. Innovative forms of global governance needed to be considered. To break deadlocks demands redesign of government structures and processes to fit for purpose to enable green innovation. The major issue at COP29 this year is finance. Now initiatives and mechanisms such as new collective quantified goal will be proposed for adoption. In addition, the COP29 presidency proposed in July a new climate action fund seeking for voluntary contributions from fossil fuels producing countries and companies. Innovative finance is a prerequisite to mobilize ambitious climate action, particularly of developing countries. Opportunities will lie ahead of us if we further advance technological and social innovation tethered to emergent political, economic, and social reality. And this has been exemplified by massive deployment and cost reduction of renewables. Second, next steps needed. Against the above backdrop, ICEF 2024 had in-depth discussions on stability and resilience of the Earth system and socially just energy transition. We evaluated the current conditions for a safe and just future on our planet, identified challenges, and deliberated on necessary policies and green innovations to construct our sustainable future for all collectively. Recognizing the daunting debt stresses of developing countries, ICEF also discussed innovative finance, which is to deploy financing solutions to stimulate private sector investment beyond public financing and enhance public-private partnership, reforming international financial architecture, especially the multilateral development banks, To address the identified investment needs, we explored the method for mobilizing finance to emerging markets, green innovation, decarbonization, and sound biodiversity security, which is assured by transparency and accountability in the process. Green innovation effort is essential. Leading experts dealt with the following 5 specific issues. First, carbon dioxide removal, CDR, and other climate stabilization options, which are indispensable to achieve carbon neutrality, encompassing a wide range of technology-based and nature-based solutions. CDR technology perspectives, possible solutions for deployment, and the international framework were debated. Second, hydrogen readiness. Experts discussed the definition of hydrogen ready, which is increasingly being used as a condition for subsidizing infrastructure, including new gas power plants. They also shed light on how to transition existing infrastructure to low-carbon hydrogen. Third, food and agriculture system, which is adversely affected by climate change. Opportunities and challenges were discussed for food and agriculture system and forestry and fishery sectors, which can be emission sources and or removers in their supply chains. Further innovation is required to ensure food security. The food and agriculture system can indeed be totally transformed from being a major contributor to emissions to being a major contributor to carbon capture and storage. Furthermore, by reducing the existing significant wastage, it can be better contribute to reducing poverty and hunger in the world. Fourth, future of nuclear energy. With focus on advanced reactors, experts examine the approaches taken by businesses towards their commercialization and various applications, as well as regulatory challenges. And fifth, sustainable marine transport, which is one of the hard-to-abate sectors. Technology and designs of vessels, sustainable fuels, and energy-efficient operation for berthing were discussed. An adverse impact on burning heavy fuel oil was also debated. Building upon the previous year's roadmap, which attracted enormous attention globally, ICEF2024 released Artificial Intelligence for Climate Change Mitigation, second edition. The 2024 roadmap comprehensively updates all chapters in the previous roadmap, adds 6 new chapters, and includes several specific achievable recommendations in each chapter. Third, in closing, diversity and inclusiveness remain ICEF's strong creed. We always embrace and celebrate the participation of speakers who represent and embody diversity, including leading youth and women innovators, especially from rural and indigenous communities. We at ICEF continue to be firmly committed to engaging diverse, cross-generational, cross-geographic stakeholders, and thereby creating stronger momentum for technological and social innovation for our carbon neutral and sustainable future. Young innovators who are leading changes in the frontiers of challenges highlighted ICEF2024 that innovation comes from people, and we must continue to invest in next generation and drive positive changes. Quote, we recognize the crucial role of innovation in shaping the future and happy to contribute for this best and the worst time of human history, for passing on the cool earth to next generations. Professor Harari, the author of *Sapiens*, identifies nuclear war, ecological challenge, and tech destruction by AI as the three major global challenges to human beings of the 21st century. ICEF should seriously address these issues in the next decades. The political and geopolitical landscape are shifting in major economies this year. While challenges remain overwhelming, we foresee tremendous opportunities to be created and captured through joint innovation and partnership in the coming decade. And planetary boundaries, while adding sense of crisis, offer a strong argument for demanding strengthened innovation and cooperation. Opportunities are emerging. They include AI for enhanced climate resilience, energy system reconfiguration, industrial value chain transformation, landscape-based food and agriculture system, innovative global governance, including financial architecture, and the rise of younger generation aspiration and inspiration to lead innovative solutions. Those are among some of the most exciting levers for green innovation. Then, this is the infographic for 2024 ICEF statement. Thank you for your attention.
Thank you very much, Professor Dr. Yamaji. Next, now we would like to ask Mr. Tanaka Nobuo, the chair of the ICEF Steering Committee, to give a summary of the ICEF 2024. So, Mr. Tanaka, please take the floor.
Thank you very much. Thank you for remaining until the last of the long 2 days. In fact, 1,721 people participated in this year's ICEF. In the real face-to-face, 854, and on the web, 867 from 93 countries. It's slightly more than last year. It's a great success. And as usual, I'm showing the ranking of the number of participants of the different sessions. The first award is a first session of planetary boundaries and energy transition. Yes, this is a session with Johan Rockström. The second one is technology session, climate stabilization and technologies. And the third one is a technology session number 2, hydrogen readiness. And the fourth is a special dialogue with Václav Šmíl and Joran Reistad. Václav Šmíl's victory in polls by the audience over Joran Reistad and others were very decisive. It seems to me that perception of general public is much more conservative and complacent than the audience of ICEF. So change is very tough for everybody, and much more communication and education maybe is needed by scientists and political leaders with global identity, as Yuval Noah Harari suggests, is urgently needed. We will continue this dialogue until Václav Šmíl will surrender. Korea-Japan cooperation in hydrogen and nuclear. This is my favorite agenda. Commercial nuclear power may be successful failure, as Václav says, and yet we need further discussion as a national security. Yuval Noah Harari, the author of *Sapiens*, identified the nuclear as the first challenge out of the 3 challenges, the human beings of the 21st century. ICEF should seriously address this in the coming years. This is the reason why I'm promoting JCAS, the trilateral collaboration between Japan, Korea, and the US on the nuclear. Our hosting organization, NEDO, should innovate itself to cover nuclear technology, as far as I'm saying for years. Planetary boundaries, very strongly addressed by Johan Rockström, while adding the sense of crisis offer a stronger argument for demanding strengthened innovations and cooperation. Yes, as Yamaji sensei summarized, we have to cover in the future ICEF meetings AI and enhanced climate resilience. Adaptation is another one. Energy system or industrial value chain transformation, food and agriculture system, global governance. There are difficult discussions this way, that way, but we have to innovate the global governance. The rise of younger generation is a very important element. At ICEF, we always try to achieve gender balance. This year's balance of panelists is 55% men versus 45% women. We have to improve next year. As last time, I said to the challenge of the young representatives in the ICEF 2023, my dream is to make the president of Tokyo Electric Company a woman to get the public acceptance for the nuclear in the future. Young people youth session was beautifully summarized by Sakano-san. Thank you very much for her. Young innovators are leading changes in the front line of challenges, and they highlighted at our COP ICEF meeting that, as Yamaji sensei vigorously said, innovation comes from people, especially young people, and we must continue to invest in next generations and drive positive changes. I like their very strong words saying we recognize the crucial role of innovation in shaping the future and happy to contribute for this best and the worst time of human history for passing on the cool earth to one and more next generations. As a conclusion, I always quote George. I can't agree more that innovation makes us positive and optimistic. Thank you very much for your participation.
Thank you very much, Mr. Tanaka. And lastly, Mr. Saito Tamotsu, a chairman of the New Energy and Industrial Technology Development Organization, will close ICEF 2024 with a few words. So, Mr. Saito, please take the floor.
Good evening, everyone. My name is Saito Tamotsu, and I am a chairman of NEDO. On behalf of the host organization, I would like to express my sincere gratitude to all the participants in the ICEF annual meeting. I also would like to thank Mr. Tanaka, the chair of the ICEF steering committee, and all the committee members for their outstanding leadership to making this meeting a success. At this ICEF, which marks the 11th such event, there were lively discussions based on the year's main theme, how to live within the planetary boundaries through green innovation. Based on the result of this discussion, Mr. Sandalow presented a roadmap entitled Artificial Intelligence for Climate Change Mitigation 2.0. This roadmap will also be presented at COP29 in Azerbaijan next month. This year's discussion was more mixed with a sense of crisis and hope than in the previous year. The problems and the issues caused by climate change are getting worse every year. Japan experienced a recent record-breaking sweltering summer this year, with the average summer temperature reaching the new high. Saudi Arabia, India, and the United States experienced a heat wave of over 50 degrees Celsius. On the global average, July 2024 was the hottest month since 1880. We see such record-breaking climate event every year, which makes me feel that we are truly on verge of overstepping the planetary boundaries proposed by Professor Rockström. On the other hand, the Paris Agreement, since a year after ICEF was launched, was in a turning point and a catalyst for rapid progress in climate action. For example, the cumulative amount of renewable energy installed worldwide has increased significantly in the decade leading up to 2023, with solar power increasing more than tenfold from 140 gigawatt to 1.6 terawatt, and wind power increasing more than threefold from 390 gigawatt to 1 terawatt. Further significant increase expected in the future. However, to avoid overstepping our planetary boundaries, we will need to triple the global renewable energy generating capacity by 2030, as agreed at COP28 last year, and overcome new challenges unlike any we have faced before. NEDO has established a global innovation fund in cooperation with the Ministry of Economy, Trade, and Industry. This is an unprecedented fund of 2.7 trillion yen, or about $19 billion, to support the development of renewable energy and other clean energy technologies. The fund is now helping to spur innovation ranging from the development of thin, lightweight perovskite solar cell and floating offshore wind turbines to the establishment of hydrogen ammonia supply chain. ICEF was one of the first to advocate the new net zero emission. Many countries, regions, and the company now share this goal. The key to making this light of hope even brighter in innovation is innovation. The innovation to solve global challenges must be open and shared, uniting us across diverse interests of companies, regions, and countries, and as a common vision for the future. Open innovation is built on the trust that people have in each other. As host of ICEF, we will continue to work to make ICEF a place where more people can come to trust one another. I hope to see all of you again next year. Thank you very much. Thank you.